Hi, good evening, Andy. And hi, Nupur. How are you?
How are you?
I'm very well, thank
Hello.
you. Hi.
Good,
Hi.
good.
I think it was 4:45, right? When we had to log
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Hi, Deepika. How are you?
Hi. We can't hear you. 1 minute, we can't hear Nupur. Nupur, are you on mute?
No, I'm not. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Andy. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Very
Can you
good.
hear me now, Deepika?
Sorry, I can hear you.
You can hear
Yes.
me now? Okay, great. Excellent.
Where is Swati? Should I just call her?
Yeah, I think she was on another webinar, so just give her a couple of minutes.
Okay, then it's all right.
But just send her a message by all means, please.
Yeah. I literally have a customer calling me who owes me a lot of money right now.
Deepika, take that call.
That's all you must take.
Yeah, Mr. Krishna? या मैं आपको अभी 10 मिनट 1 घंटा में फोन करती हूँ हाँ ठीक है ओके हाँ जब जूम में है ठीक है
Okay, Deepika, Swati has just finished and concluded her webinar, so she'll be joining in a couple of minutes. That's the message that's popped up.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So Andy, there's a little bit of a change. Abha's had a personal emergency, so she's not going to be the moderator.
Okay.
So I'm doing the moderation.
Oh, okay.
I like the fact that you're sitting behind my furniture, Andy.
Yeah. Yeah, really. I could just take my computer and show my whole office.
Hi, Samriddhi. Somebody saying good evening to all. So should we start? I think probably we'll just see as the thing is going. And
yeah, if you have scheduled it, Deepika, for 5, you want to just wait because it typically takes people a bit of time to join
and stuff. Yeah.
Andy, how's Dubai? Everything okay? Is it more normal than we are in India at the moment?
It's getting better, yes. So they basically opened up, for the most part, everything. Mm-hmm. By this Sunday, they've said that 100% of employees can go back to work. 50% malls have reopened. We still do have curfew, but they just moved it back. So now our curfew is from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., which before it was at 8 p.m. So, but we're the only emirate. Abu Dhabi and all the other emirates, their curfew is still 8 o'clock. And right now, I can't go to Abu Dhabi and they can't come here. A lot of restrictions, but getting better somewhat. Yeah, like gyms have opened and stuff like that. Cinemas, yeah. Lots of restrictions in place, of course.
So, whenever you go to Dubai, you should go and see Andy's school.
I must. So, Deepika, thanks for this platform because we're connecting with more people. And Andy, I'm going to take up.
Yes, of course. Anytime.
Nupur, you should go and see his school. You love it.
Absolutely. I would love to.
You know why you love it, Nupur? Because the school has a lot of gray.
Lot of?
Gray color.
Oh,
gray.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Our school colors are gray and yellow.
All right. That's great.
Yeah.
Swati has just messaged me. She will be 5 minutes late as she's on a call with Fiki.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's wonderful. We have people joining us from Nigeria. Good evening, everyone who's joining in. That's lovely.
Yeah, we have a lot of people from Nigeria, South Africa, and UAE.
Oh, good.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, so it's since we are operational in all these markets, so a lot of our customers and it's a lot of the people who've been in touch with. Hi, Rachna Bora.
And it's across. So there's Hyderabad, Calcutta, Kolhapur, North, South, East, West. Deepika, you're everywhere.
Yes.
Well done, Popcorn.
Someone from Abu Dhabi, hello. Yeah, I was living in Abu Dhabi for 3 years. I miss it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there's
Andy,
Qatar as well.
are you like kind of 50% back all the staff in the school, or it's?
Yeah, right now we probably have about maybe 40%. We can have up to 50. So like right now, all the office staff are here, our teaching assistants and these type of people. We just have them doing different, basically things for next year to get things ready. But you know, our HR's here and facilities and all of the leadership are here. So, yeah.
Nupur, is that true of Delhi as well? Is it a lot more mobile and accessible? Because Bombay still continues to be a bit cautious about moving in.
No, Delhi has opened up a lot, and unfortunately, because of that, or fortunately, I don't know, cases are increasing like crazy. So, you know, everyone keeps talking about herd immunity, but herd immunity takes 60% to reach, and we are still not even 1% infected as a population. So stepping out is very dangerous at the moment, I think.
Sure.
This is a really relevant month to stay in, I feel.
Absolutely.
So, and people in Delhi are taking it a bit easy, to be honest, because everything has opened, everyone's going to offices.
Like there's proper traffic on the road.
Social distancing is not being practiced. People are socializing full on. So it's a little bit scary. You know, we have a new baby in the house. My brother just had a baby. So we extra conscious, we are very scared about the baby's health, really. So we are trying to take all the precautions. Yeah.
Deepika, we're live now. You may want to
So hi
initiate
everybody,
that.
we're just waiting for the fourth panelist, Swati Popat, to join in. So please bear with me, and then we'll be on as soon as she's joined us.
Super. Hi Kavita from Besant, good to see you joining in. And everyone else from DPS, Rajasthan, lots of Delhiites as well.
Yeah, Deepika, thank you. Actually, you know, like Fatima said, this is a great platform to express one's views and to learn from each other, really. You know, I think the world has today changed from competition to collaboration, and I'm loving these webinars because all school owners want to learn from each other. Yes. Nobody knows what's happening. Yes. We all want to learn from each other. We are all in the same uncertain situation. So thank you for organizing this. This is fantastic.
It was all ours. It's been like a huge learning experience, I think, for all of us, and it's been a lot of fun. So this is a step that we did.
Yeah, no, we have to think.
So it's like
about that. We have to be passionate. But Nupur, I was just going to add that Deepika actually put it down to Deepika to organize something like that and make sure it's global. Make sure everyone early or keeping them virtually, Nupur.
Because we have these sort of like quite scared, and at this time I tried customer my name a WhatsApp group instead, and I didn't take on people here.
Right.
But it's meaning it's a trying time for everyone. So that's what I was talking.
And also the third factor add in to make the mix more interesting is that we have schools in rural areas as well as semi-rural and urban areas across India. So we are working very hard to develop, SOPs which can be adapted locally as well to wherever the school is. And we are being very particular not only about safety and academics, but also about mental well-being of the children, students, and the teachers at the moment, because I feel that's very paramount. So there's a lot of counseling happening. The stress is laid on mental well-being at the moment, and whenever schools do open, we feel it's very important that children and parents are happy going to school.
Solving these sort of issues. So it's become like, I think it's become like a closer community. Is that how it is in Dubai as well?
Yes. We really, you have to rely on each other. And we're just getting ideas from each other. We're calling each other. We have WhatsApp groups. We're doing webinars. I mean, we're doing the whole thing. It's like you said, it's definitely brought us all together. I'm from the US, so I'm communicating with my school friends back home. What are you guys doing? So we need ideas from all over the place, because it seems like every day presents a different challenge, and we need solutions.
I don't know if you picked this up, but CNN had this broadcasted that WHO has actually now said that the statistic is that asymptomatic people, it's going to be very rare for them to pass on the infection. And this is a whole turnaround from what we heard 2 months back.
It just came in today or yesterday, even I saw.
Yeah, yesterday in the press briefing, yeah.
So that changes a lot of things, actually. It puts a lot of ease into people's minds as well.
I mean, that's reassuring, quite frankly. I mean, if we're thinking about the physical world, and we should be thinking about the physical world, that just is a lot, from a medical standpoint, a lot more safer,
Sure.
Deepika, do you want to check with Swati? Do you want to go live and let her join in? Because I think...
So hi, everybody. We're just waiting for our fourth panelist to join in, Swati Popal. So please bear with us for a few moments. I've already messaged her. She's actually on an important call. So I think it's an international call or something, she said. So if you just bear with me, I think she should be joining in soon. And meanwhile, you can listen to our chatter.
Yeah, but it's lovely. I'm just very, very impressed. There are people tuning in from everywhere. And someone said it's 12. Well, it's midnight. Ooh. Wow. Deepika, it's your charm.
Yeah.
You're there.
So Deepika, how many countries are you supplying to at the moment?
So we are actually working a lot in UAE. In the Middle East, we're doing Oman, we're doing Saudi Arabia, we're doing Nepal, we're doing Singapore, then we're doing Ghana, and now we just set up office in South Africa as well. So it's like, internationally now our operation has really increased a lot.
Wow.
And it's because exports has also become like a major part of our whole business. And, meaning the focus here is just to give safe furniture to kids. That's what we've all been about right from the beginning.
The other day I was having a very interesting discussion with someone. There are always these conspiracy theorists whenever a crisis comes. And somebody called me and said, the brick and mortar schools are going to end in the future. This is the end. Now it's only going to be online education. And it got me really thinking, what is the future of education going to look like in the next 10 years? And I really think that, yes, online education is going to be very important, but brick and mortar schools are important for one most important reason, that is at the social development of a child.
Yes.
Where else can they develop emotionally and socially? And
Nupur, safely and in a manner that works for every individual, because when as parents are at the moment at home, there's either too much, there's no science involved, and I think that's where the children are either going through extremes. So yeah, I'm glad you share the same opinion, because
I don't
For
think,
me,
I think,
yeah.
I think education is, I think social development is as much a part of education. How do you learn to collaborate amongst each other? How do you learn to work in teams if you don't go and physically interact with kids your own age? So, I think what we're looking at is a form of blended learning, really.
Yes, yes.
We do
100%.
both. We do online as well as going to schools is still going to be relevant. So,
Yes.
Deepika, both our businesses are still relevant in the future. Let's just say that.
Yes, but I think you make a valid point. I don't think we will ever go back to the way things were before COVID.
Yes.
Never.
Yes.
Even in the elementary school age, many parents have said they want a blended approach now because they've seen their children gain more independent skills from having to be able to log on and having to do things by themselves. We were just discussing this today as a senior leadership team. But you're very right. At our school, we place a huge emphasis on the social and emotional skills of our children, and you can't get that from online learning. You just can't. So a blended approach is good.
And one of the things we were planning was that once schools do reopen, then, how do you make children collaborate in teams? So we thought we could actually start with non-contact sports like yoga and dance and music to begin with in the first phase, so that they can interact but at a safe distance from each other.
Yeah, but even with even with contact sports like football, cricket, I know I'm a cricketer's wife, so I'm going to say this: they are thinking about it. They're thinking about how they shouldn't put to shine the ball. Basically, a lot of it is what the hands are using and what's on the ball. There's a lot, like schools are working behind the scenes to create these SOPs for safe zones. Will come back because they have to come back. That's a reality. Yeah. But it's also sport. I mean, there's so much effort with the Ministry of Sport at the moment behind the scene. Because the one thing my dad says, he misses sport. He's like, I'm happy to sit at home, but can someone else play so that we can log on and do it? So I think the world will normalize. Yes. But I agree with Andy as well. It has to be the socio-emotional learning because these kids are actually living through history. And they're going to have a lot of these memories. It's actually going to come out in the next few months when it does normalize, because right now we're still in that honeymoon period. And that's where schools are going to be important.
I have a very interesting observation also that a lot of our teachers brought to notice. They said that during this period and through online learning, a lot of students who were not flourishing in class before, who were introverts, are actually flourishing now when they don't have the pressure of somebody looking at them and they are working in smaller groups and they're working all online. So previously introverted kids are coming out of their shell and blossoming. So that has been a huge positive of online learning. And secondly, kids who live very far away from each other are able to collaborate online, which they couldn't do before because of distance. So kids across different states are collaborating amongst our schools, which is amazing, which couldn't be done before. And ideas are being exchanged across states and across countries. So I feel like these are the two things that have really been a positive from online learning. As well.
Yes, for sure. I've been trying to get in touch with Swati, but her phone is engaged and she still seems to be on the call. So we just give it another 2-3 minutes and then we can just probably start and, be the same. And a very warm welcome to all of you from all parts of the world. We're just waiting for the fourth contestant to join in and we'll be on our way then. And meanwhile, somebody just said they're enjoying our chatter. So please feel free to continue, everyone. A lot of comments here saying that they're enjoying the chatter.
Well, one thing that I've noticed, and I saw someone post about this too, is this doesn't really affect us in Dubai because we're a more well-off country. But back in the US, I come from an inner city school. And my school system back home, there's doing no online learning because many of the students don't have Wi-Fi access, they don't have laptops, they don't have iPads. So what we're seeing in the US in many districts is there's a huge decline in the students' learning abilities. So in my school before, many students come to me 2 years behind. We're looking at that gap increasing, which is a big problem. So I think if this continues long-term for people, they've got to look at more solutions, how they can help these families that don't have Wi-Fi, that don't have laptops and iPads and devices. There has to be another solution for these people.
Yeah. So Andy, a lot of them are also saying like we have a large percentage of our population also in areas where they do not have connectivity. So we're using
Right.
cable network. There are a lot of NGOs that have donated, perhaps not gadgets, and it's not live teaching, but what they have done is pre-recorded sessions using more voice
Yes.
notes as opposed to the audio visual. And also they're creating these little pockets, Andy, which is pretty innovative, where one child who has connectivity is also able to then share a lot of the experience. So I think it's actually 21st century in reality. You're
Yes.
finally critically thinking, you're creatively coming up with solutions, you're collaborating and you're communicating. Everything we said in webinars, but we never really got down to implementing it. And I do stand for the industry. I think our report card needed a bit of self-correction. And in a way, the one thing that the COVID-19 pandemic has created is this opportunity to improvise for the sake of the future. And I'm thinking, 80 years ahead. It's not about tomorrow. I mean, look at history. History tells you it took them, 10 years to get out of the last pandemic, which was 100 years ago.
Right.
It got over in 2 years when they figured it out. So we're not out of it, like Nupur mentioned. But we're going to have to think. I'm glad the industry is opening up because we have to see what's happening. But yes, I think as Indians, we tend to believe that, it'll go away. It's not going away. So we're going to have to be a lot more conscious. And I think that's a big learning from this. Deepika?
Swati is joining in a minute. She's having some internet issue with the link. So please just give a second. I think she should be there with us and then we can start.
So there are a lot of questions, Andy and Nupur, if you've read, they're all talking about the fact that students don't seem to be as engaged with online classes. I think the statistics, if we actually share them through our webinar, we'll be able to tell them some overwhelming statistic because yes, there are pockets that are not engaged, but they weren't engaged even in the physical world. They were listening to you, but their mind was off. So I don't think those problems will go away. It's just about how we creatively get them to engage. And it's also social presence online. So we may want to address that as it comes up as well.
Okay.
So Swati is just joining us, I think in another 2 seconds. She's just messaging me that she's having some connection. Really apologize for that. I think she had some important call. And let her give her excuse herself when she joins in. That's the thing. So I think, Fatima, your son must be having a very difficult time because I know he's a very, very sporty kid.
So actually, quite well, he still had to continue till May the 29th when he graduated from middle school to go into high school. But I think he was loving what the American School of Mumbai did, which was, it was, asynchronous classes and synchronous classes. So they had a very flexible routine. So you didn't have to be online. And they still had to do sport. But I'm loving how the PE sessions went on the laptop. I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm logging in my thoughts about PE. So, the kids found ways. There was exercise routines built in. I think they learned to cope. Deepika, and I think it was about time they learned and found solutions.
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Swati.
Hi, how are you? So sorry.
Not a problem at all.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Swati. Hi.
Hello.
So let's start then. Hi, everyone. I'm Deepika Goel, Director of Popcorn Furniture. We're in the school furniture business and have over 5 million happy students all over the world who are our brand ambassadors. Popcorn has always had the safety of kids in mind, and that's been the whole essence of our brand since many of us know you, many of you know us since a long time. We've been supplying safe and ergonomic school furniture since the last 20 years and have sold to over 8,000 schools all over India, other parts of Asia, Africa. Over the last few days, I've been getting a lot of calls from school promoters and principals asking my suggestions how they can organize the furniture in the classrooms once the kids come back after the COVID situation. Post the COVID, the school and the school building have actually become two separate entities. A lot of you wanted to know if we've developed any special products which would enable social distancing once the school opens after the COVID-19 situation. That's when we came up with the idea of doing a webinar to collectively solve all the problems that schools are facing with this situation. So we decided to put up a panel of experts in the education industry to answer all your questions. You know, many of you have messaged me in the last few days that we've got your favorite people on the panel. So panelists, just telling you, they have very high expectations from you. No pressure, but I'm just telling all of you.
No pressure.
So jokes apart, that's probably true, as we had to buy a Zoom connection to accommodate over 2,000 of you because we had over 2,200 registrations and we were so thrilled. So we also have a very large international audience. We've been chatting with a few of them and seeing them. We have promoters from UAE, Nigeria, and South Africa on the webinar today, and even Qatar. Many of you are customers since the last few years, so a big thank you to all of you from Popcorn Furniture. One lucky winner attending the webinar will be the winner of a 30,000 rupees gift voucher from Popcorn Furniture. So please stay tuned and we'll announce the winner in the course of the webinar. Since there are a lot of you, please request you to put the questions in Q&A and I can just put them to the panelists. Let me start by introducing you to the panelists. I promise you not to bore you because none of these people actually need any introductions. Abha Adams, who was supposed to be our moderator for today, is unable to attend due to a personal emergency and sends her apologies. The most famous face in India on early childhood education, Dr. Swati Popat-Watts is an educator, an avant-garde educational activist, and a teaching expert. She's the founder of Early Childhood Association and the reason behind a lot of webinars on early child education. She's really interesting. A warm welcome to you, Swati.
Thank you. Thank
Our
you.
second panelist is Nupur Goenka. She's the director of the Goenka Group. Nupur is one dynamic individual, and her role in Goenka involves constant upgradation of methods and ideologies of teaching and focusing on expansion in India and abroad. Welcome, Nupur.
Thank you.
Andy Lyons is an American educator with 20 years experience in the US and UAE. Andy is one of the coolest school directors I've ever met. He's the director of the Ignite School in Dubai, which is one of the leading international schools in UAE. And he's joining us all the way from Dubai. So a warm welcome to you, Andy. Last but not the least, let me introduce you to Fatima Agarkar, who's an award-winning educator and a veteran of 3 education startups. Like 1 is tough, 3 is big. That combines sports with education. So let's start now. Schools over the years are the most important resource for parents for sharing the responsibility of bringing up and educating their children. So Swati, let me start by asking you, how do you develop the trust factor between the parents and the school authorities?
So
and
I
I'd love
think
to know all your opinion, all 4 of you, I'd love to know your opinion on it.
so. First of all, thank you, Deepika, and thank you to all the panelists. It's an honor to be on the same platform as all of you. Andy, I know how difficult it is in the UAE right now. We have 2 preschools there, and I think it's September when we will all open now.
Inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. So very important to understand, Deepika, that schools don't have to work right now to build the trust. They should have worked before. So it's the schools who already have the trust of parents are the ones who are now doing good work during the lockdown and in the COVID period. And it's the schools who did not work on their trust with the parents are the ones who are struggling. So I would urge those schools who have lost that little bit of trust in the parent community, from the parent community, to work on rebuilding that trust and that bond first, and then talk about fees. Because right now, if you see the scenario in India, everything has been turned into a fee tug of war between the schools and the parents. But it is not so in many schools. In many schools, parents are not even thinking twice and paying the fees, because they know that the future of their child is secure with the school and its management. So it is very important to take parent feedback into consideration. We usually call it complaints. And I always tell school owners that it's not okay to use the word complain every time a parent wants to give you a feedback, because a parent has as much right to voice their views, their expectations from the school, as much as the school has the right to make policies and rules. So it's very, very important that trust is something which is an ongoing work, which a school needs to invest in, especially when it comes to the parent community.
Fantastic. Actually, it's so true, because you can't build trust overnight. Honestly, that's so true. Andy, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with what she just said. And it starts from day one. Something I do as the director of our school that all of my parents are always just astonished. Half the time they don't know I'm the director. They just think I'm a teacher or someone, because every morning I stand out at car riders and I greet every single child and every parent. And it's that constant communication with them. Once we've gone to distance learning, I do a weekly parent meeting on Zoom every Tuesday. So I'm always there Tuesday, 2 o'clock. Parents know that. If they have any question, they can come ask me. I'm helping them with IT. I'm not an IT expert, but I'm learning. So they know that they can contact me at any time. We use Class Dojo. Parents message me on Class Dojo all the time. It can be midnight, it can be the weekend, but I always return immediately because it's on my phone, it's always with me. So I 100% agree with what Swati said. You have to build that from the very beginning. So those people that didn't have it going into distance learning, they're at a huge disadvantage. And not just your parents too. The same with your teachers. I know we haven't talked a lot about teachers yet, but the teachers have to have that trust too, because they're the ones also dealing with the parents on the front end more times than we are as the administrators, the owners, the directors, whomever. But I think, like she said, it starts from day one. You got to be approachable. And something being in the UAE that I learned from day one, I've been here almost 4 years now, is parents have to be heard. And that takes up a lot of time sometimes. But I've solved a lot of issues with families, calling them into my office and just sitting and listening. And that's it. Many times I have zero advice for them at all, but they know I'm there to listen to them and know that I care about their child and about their well-being and what's best for them and their academic journey. And many times people just don't take the time to do that. They're too busy and they got to be here and they got to go do this, but you have to take that time to build that relationship. So I 100% agree with what you have said there.
Nupur, what do you have to say about that? Because this is going to be a very big issue. You know, people are waiting for the vaccine to come out. They don't want to send their children to school to them. So what do we do in such a situation?
You know, one thing, two things actually that we have been really working hard on for the last couple of years is, one, developing a culture in a school in which parents are a part of a decision-making process. And we have very open and transparent operations. Parents are kept in the loop. And we are trying to teach our teachers, train our teachers, principals, non-violent forms of communication. Even when this is something that parents have also. So if a parent comes up with a concern, how do you address the concern in a way that is a win-win situation for both stakeholders? Because like Swati very rightly said, that sometimes the problem is very small, is taken as a complaint, but it can be easily solved if the right words are used. If empathy is used for a teacher to understand and empathize with the parent that they are sending their most precious commodity to you, it's the most important thing for them. And if we understand that simple fact and develop empathy towards parents and their concerns, that's very important. And the other thing, like Swati very rightly said, that we have always stood for safety as an organization. So that's one thing that our parents really trust us, that tomorrow if we say we are opening our schools, then they'll know we'll take 100% care that the safety of their child is paramount for us. And like I said before, more than just physical safety, I think mental safety is very important. Today, we are doing a lot of counseling. Mental well-being is the most important thing for us. We are talking constantly to our parents, to our teachers. We are creating SOPs we have 64 franchise schools. So we are creating SOPs on how to address issues with parents as well, and training our principals and teachers across the entire gamut of our schools. So I agree with both the panelists full-heartedly. Transparency and open communication channels and developing trust from earlier on is very important to continue having that trust between our parents.
Yes, absolutely. Very well said, Nupur. Very well said. Definitely. Fatima, what are your comments on this?
Thank you so much. So, this is the problem when you go last, because everything you want to say has already been initiated, well established, and concluded. So I'm going to sneak in and therefore add in to what Swati actually mentioned, trust has to build, and those who had not invested in that communication channel, well, all is not lost. I'm an optimist. I think you still have time to go. Set up, in my mind, a coronavirus task force with parents as important stakeholders. At least in my 20 years in this industry, I think some of my best plans have been because fathers and mothers thinking it through, because it's their child in that physical classroom in your school, have been responsible for some of the best strategies. Listen, be empathetic. Remember, it's their child first. It came to, child came to you and became yours, but you were not the mother and father. So there is an important learning. I think this task force is very important, and it should be section-wise. What happens in the early years or the elementary years is a little different from middle and high school. Have enough people as ambassadors, therefore, talking to you, guiding you, and also they become your ambassadors. They are the ones who will then stand by you and communicate as well, because one man cannot do it. I agree with Andy. You need advisory time with parents where there is dedicated time over a cup of coffee to say, this is what we did, this is what you can do, these are my problems. I also, very importantly, think that schools now need to communicate their SOPs. There's so much hard work being done by nobody's been on a break since the lockdown. Everybody has been working. They have invested in these standard operating processes. They've built safe environments. They're ready with manuals. Communicate that to the parents. And the third and the most important one is that recognize that you may need to repeat it 40 times. You're happy to do that when the parent is coming to you for admission. Make that effort continuously for 13 years. And it's a long process. Some don't understand. Everybody doesn't have your IQ. There's a reason why you're the principal, because you have the ability to think macro. So go down to that level, communicate with those parents. So, my view again is, yes, communication is the only thing. COVID-19 has given us this gift of communication, effective communication. It's the only way. It's going to be EQ. As the industry forward, you don't have an excuse now. You've got to pull up your socks and build that trust. And that trust means working every day. The CEO of Starbucks actually said it's not a right. It has to be earned. It has to be everyday process. A lot of hard work, principles, not easy. 18 to 36 months is going to be your report card, and you might as well build and take everyone along with it. Thanks, Deepika.
Also, meaning I actually agreed with all four of you, because at the end of the day, it's actually hats off to all the teachers for going from a completely offline model to an online model, because the teachers are suddenly, they've been like overnight creating, like, it's almost like creating a new project. So like Fatima's done 3 startup ventures. I think every teacher today needs to be saluted because she's done a startup venture as well.
Absolutely.
So, it's been quite a task. And if she did this, it's because she cared for your kids. So I'm sure like the trust factor has to be established between the two of you for sure. So let me go on with the next question, and let me start by asking you, Andy. How do you reimagine the schools to be post the lockdown? Are we talking about a blended model here? And if yes, then what sort?
That is a great question. And everyone wants to know, parents calling me daily. In fact, we actually had, they're doing inspections here of our distance learning program. We had our inspection today, so it was a little bit overwhelming, but that was one of the things we were talking about. We still don't know what it's going to look like. We could all be back on campus come August 30th. However, I don't think so. I think there will be some type of blended approach. We've looked at a 30-70 model, 30% on campus, 70% online. We've looked at opposite, 70-30, 50-50, staggering days. You come every other day. Certain grade levels come each day. At this point, we don't know what it's going to look like. We're doing a lot of scenario planning, but like I said earlier, I don't think it will ever go back the way it was. There will always now be some type of online learning with traditional school. But one of the questions the inspector asked us today was, in the scenario planning, you also have to think about what happens if we do open up school, whether it's 30%, 70%, or 100%, a child comes to school and we found out they have corona. Now what do you do? Do you shut down for 1 week? Do you shut down for 2 weeks? What do you do? You know, so a lot of these things we still have to wait on government regulations and from the health authorities. So there's still so many uncertainties. You know, we've got KG1, KG2 parents that, you know, they really don't want to re-register for next school year yet, or register at all, because, and I can't say that I blame them, our teachers are doing an exceptional job. They're doing live lessons, but what 3- and 4-year-old can sit for a 45-minute lesson, a 15-minute lesson? So when you think about the tuition fees that they're paying, and they're having to sit with the child, or some adult is having to sit with them because they can't log into Google Classroom by themselves or log into the live lesson, submit lessons on Seesaw, these types of things. So, you know, there's so many things that could be changing. And the KG1, KG2, even grade 1, you know, that's a big concern for parents. It's a big concern for schools, because as a newer school, our registration, the majority of our registrations come from KG1, KG2, you know, so that it raises a lot of issues that we don't have any answers to yet. So everything right now is scenario planning.
Yes, meaning that's actually, I think, scenario planning versus, you know, different permutations and combinations. Definitely that's going to be a thing. Swati, what do you have to say about that? Like, what blended model are we talking about, especially for the little ones? Because they're probably a lot of kids who might be away from school a lot longer than the older kids.
So I would tell you that it's going to be very different for every age group, and that is what a school needs to keep in mind. You cannot paint them all with the same brush post-COVID, or even now in the lockdown. As Andy said, we don't know how unlock is going to look like, because if you see many countries who opened up their schools have had now to shut them down because of a lot of COVID cases that occurred in the schools. So we don't have a model right now to follow world over. If you read the 2 documents that the Early Childhood Association has issued for schools, one is called the Safety Reopening Guidelines for Preschools, and I would urge all preschools. Brazil has accepted those guidelines and translated them. I would urge all of you all to please use those guidelines. And the second manual we came out with is called Developmentally Appropriate Practice in Blended Learning. Because again, that is something that people think that the classroom can be superimposed in an online platform, and it doesn't work that way. So the blended learning has to be understood by teachers to be different. They need to treat children differently. Blended learning is not, you don't have a captive audience now in a brick classroom. They are at their own independence to sit through your session or not sit through your session. So engagement plays a huge role in this. So I would say the model of CBC works the best, which is click, brick, click, because you will have to have an online model. You will go to a physical school and then you will again come back to the click. So that's what blended is going to look like, even for early years. So if I give you an example, we have schools in the UAE, we have nursery schools, and we have schools in India. The India population has taken very well to this blended learning format, even for our early years, and it's doing very well. Whereas UAE has not. We have just 3 or 4 parents who have registered for the blended learning format. So you will have to cater to every parent's mindset quite differently. Even in the same country, parent from 2 different states will behave differently when it comes to this online kind of a teaching. So it is very, very important for us to understand that life has changed, and it's high time we change it in our mind also. You know, the VUCA world that everybody was talking about in conferences and throwing around that phrase so flippantly, VUCA world. We are now in that VUCA world, because we right now don't know what the future holds for us. We don't know whether the past that we lived, we will ever get back that life or not. So it's very important to work right now on our own social and emotional development, especially emotional development, because we are the ones who are going to be there to support parents and teachers and children when they do start coming back to school. It's going to be scary for parents to send their children to school without a vaccine. So I don't see parents sending their children till a vaccine is found. So till then, are we saying give up on the education of your child? Give up on the foundation of brain development in your child? And that is the conviction with which schools will have to approach parents now, to explain to them that learning can continue at home, and let's do it on an individualized learning plan kind of a format, so that every child gets the best out of this format.
Nupur, you're probably the only one on the panel who has the play schools, you have the K-12 schools, you have the universities. So we're talking about 3 blended models over here for the little ones, for the middle school, for the K-12 schools, and for the university. How do you take up such a big challenge? Because we all agree that it has to be a blended model.
I think just exactly like Swati said, that it's very different for different age groups, and how different age groups even adapt to the blended model. We had some excellent results also with our preschoolers. They were very excited to do singing and dancing online. And of course, they have a short attention span, and that is a challenge. But, you know, I must commend not only our teachers. I've been talking to a lot of other school owners who are my friends. Teachers are working tirelessly, and you know, whichever teachers are listening out there today, a big shout out to all of you, big pat on your backs. Teachers have really gone out and innovated and adapted and put themselves out there to plan and make lesson plans to engage children of all age groups, because you need a different kind of engagement for a 5-year-old versus say 18-year-old. How to create projects which are relevant to an 18-year-old versus say a 5-year-old. So our teachers are working tirelessly on that. And of course, we are waiting for government directives. Nobody really knows how we'll open, when we'll open. We'll probably take a staggered approach, like Andy said, maybe just open a few grades in the beginning from 9 to 12, and then go on to middle school and then to primary school. Two of the things that I see happening in the future, very importantly, is one, that the curriculum has to be shortened. The CBSE curriculum, for example, is too much. It needs to be made tighter and more relevant. So that's one of the changes I see happening. And the second change I see happening is in assessment. I think standardized assessment is going to go out of the window. It's very difficult to do that kind of assessment online anyway, because a personalized assessment is a way to go. And the way we are tackling this is through Google Forms to begin with. And that has been very successful for us so far. It was a challenge in the beginning, but Google Forms has really helped us with that. But I think that's the future now, personalized assessment. And of course, like Fatima said in the beginning of the discussion, we were only talking about developing 21st century skills and creativity and collaboration. Now I think this is in need of today. We have been thrown into the deep end of the ocean, and we've been of the pool, and we've been told swim. And who are the ones who are swimming? Who are the ones who are surviving? Who will survive out of this? Somebody who scored like 100% in their board exam, or somebody who knows how to manage crisis? Somebody who knows how to maintain their mental balance in when they lose their job, because so many people are losing jobs. So this crisis has really shown us what is important and what is not important, which skills are important. And I think education will slowly evolve to develop those skills. You know, how to manage crisis, how to adapt. Tomorrow you can ask Siri any question. So knowledge is very cheap today. So what is the role of the teachers? The role of the teachers has really gone from providing information to being a facilitator on how to use that information. We've gone from text to context. Teachers have to convert the text into context. So the role of teachers have also changed. And COVID has really just thrust it upon us, and there's no choice. We can't just keep talking about it anymore. We have to do it now. And that's the only way to do things, when it's just handed to you without any preparation. And yes, we are struggling. Yes, we are stumbling. We are learning from each other, but I think we'll get there in a few months. And all of these are just building blocks. These are just teething pains. They will go away. I'm very optimistic about the future of blended learning. Go on.
Yeah, that's the way to go, definitely. Fatima, I'm really sorry about coming to you last again, but you always have something interesting to tell us. So what are your comments on this?
Thanks, Deepika. I think Swati, Andy, and Nupur have mentioned that it is going to be online. It's going to be in the physical space. It's going to be back online. It's going to be that hybrid model. The percentage is going to vary. I mean, for me, when I heard the WHO press conference yesterday, for the longest time we've been told that asymptomatic patients are the super spreaders. Now we have data to suggest that the asymptomatic patients are not forwarding that to others. So, science is still figuring it out. So God, let's be patient about this industry. Health is a priority. SOPs are in place. We do want to be in the physical space because that space is sacrosanct. It is important developmentally for the little children, more so for the primary and the middle school. The percentage in my mind, if I could, and if I can put it down, it's going to be 30, 30, 30, and then 10% is just going to be complete lockdown when we're coping with another one. If you look at history, 100 years ago, when they dealt with this pandemic, it took 2 years. It was 1918 to 1920. And then it took 5 years for everything to stabilize. We're 100 years ahead. We have technology, we have science, we have research helping us, but it's still going to take us time to experiment. I think we just need to accept that. What's also going to be important is a lot of the questions are telling us that these webinars are all about the elite. It's where technology is available. It's talking about metros. It's not talking about rural India. I think rural India has done a lot of, CBSE for one, has made a lot of effort with the alternative curriculum. Cable networks are being used. They are pushing out data offline. For me, Deepika, it's going to be asynchronous and synchronous classes where, like Nupur mentioned, problem solving will actually happen in the classroom, virtual or physical. There'll be a lot of research that's done behind the scenes, but everyone will be skilled with IT. Now, whether it's in rural India, and that's where the government initiative to get the IT infrastructure, I know chief ministers are working on it because they recognize that our country lies in rural places. So that's being addressed as well. The other bit is that, I actually had the director of Sunbeam mention something that was very important. He said, forget learning, forget online learning and forget physical learning. What's going to be important is safe play zones for the children. This they're not getting because parents are still worried about the parks or their building or the facilities that they have. They need safe play zones, contactless sport or contact sport. That is a holistic education. So they're missing out of it, and we're going to have to find ways to do it. And this is then based on trust by putting systems in place. Restaurants are opening up. Okay, so we're going to see evidence of what is working in other industries. They've got protocols in place. Like the country opened up with containment zones still locked down. But those that are in the green zones can open up. Let that process begin because it must, it has to help parents, children who are in abusive households, special needs children, they all need that physical space. So for me, at least some areas where mobile vans can be available, where a little crash can be created, that's what we're going to see. Yes, those brick and mortar schools will have, like Swati said, CBC. That's a fact. The percentage is something that we're going to work on in the next 2 months. But I'm very optimistic. Like Nupur said, I'm hoping in December we're out there earlier. If August can have a lot of the parent trust and have us in the physical space, not the little children. That remains a priority under 10, but definitely the world beyond grade 3 can start in safer ways, and it must. Actually, Deepika, you're the one who's connected us to this wide audience. You've got everyone globally in India, and you're actually in so many schools, rural, urban. I don't think you make that distinction. Deepika, you're going to have to tell us what you're thinking and what is up with popcorn to give us that faith to be in the physical space.
So thanks, Fatima. That's, I was actually supposed to be a panelist today and I had to get into moderation because of Mrs. Adams.
You're doing a wonderful job, Deepika.
Thanks a lot. So furniture is obviously going to end up in playing a very important role now in the classroom because of the social distancing issues. And since this thing happened, we've been sitting with the designers and we've been trying to research on the premise that you obviously can't do away with the furniture that you have. You can't possibly go and buy new furniture. So what does a school do now? So normal classroom in India is 400 or 500 square feet. You've got 30, 40, sometimes even 50 students in a class. And if a school can't, can't keep that social distancing as per WHO norms, which is 6 feet, what does a school do? So we develop these see-through acrylic partitions, which can be easily placed on a table. You can have a look at them at your screen. So these can be placed if you have a double desk in class. It can be placed between the two kids. They're acrylic, they're very easy to put, they can be easily sanitized. You can also put them in staff rooms, you can put them in libraries, you can put them in laboratories, multi-purpose rooms. So they can easily be put anywhere, for example, here you have these transparent partitions which have been placed, they're not very visible, but you can just place them anywhere you want. We're also doing antibacterial tops that inhibit growth and spread of bacteria by almost 99.9%. So I think Swati is going to be very happy about that because, a lot of play schools definitely would want that. So it's called AB+, and it's a surface which is completely homogeneous and non-porous, so it helps in creating and maintaining hygiene. Also, Fatima, I really feel that the future trend is going to be all about flexi classrooms. Yes. Rigidity is definitely out. So we have a video here which we can show you that, if I can just have the video, please. So as you see here from this video, a number of our schools have already been using, these sort of collaborative classrooms where you can just rearrange the classroom within a matter of minutes. I know Fatima and Nupur are very fond of such classrooms. And these are great for social distancing because you just separate them and then you join them together. Some classrooms are on casters, some are not, but it enables social distancing. So definitely, that's the way future, and these are the sort of things that we've been trying to work out. And there are a lot more measures like mobile screens, which can be put between students, within a certain, you can divide the class into parts. All these are now available with us, which will end up in helping things. Now, I've got like a whole lot of questions which are coming. So I'm going to just open the webinar for the questions. So Swati, the first question I think is for you. So many students are facing mental stress and there is a request, they're asking how do they make them, how do they tackle this for them? Because they're not even meeting the child is at home, messaging the teacher, messaging, the principal that I'm under a lot of stress. How do they handle this?
See, this is the most important thing, why online learning has been criticized so much by government bodies, etc. In fact, we have a meeting tomorrow in Karnataka because Karnataka kind of banned online learning and said that don't do it. But we are trying to go and convince them that children have been cooped up at home for almost 2 months, seeing the same faces all day long. Without any routine, because they've now left their routine. They're not having a bath at the right time. They're eating when they want. They watch too much of television, play video games. They sleep late. All this impacts brain development in children. And when we talk about children, the brain is still developing even up to 21 years of age. So which means if you are having a routine which has gone berserk, it is going to have a toll on your mental development and on your mental health. So it is very, very important that children find their anchor person, which means a person whom they can confide in, which is someone outside the family if required. Many children have their anchor person within the family and they don't need anybody outside. But some of them do, especially depending on the age in which the child is. Children in the age group of 10 to 16 years, they usually don't want to talk to their family for various reasons. So they find an anchor person who's a teacher or who's a buddy in school. And it's very important that we give them the opportunity to have these chats, to freely open up during these chats, and not to judge them on the kind of things that they are sharing during these chats. Because you can't say that you are 13 years old and you're not supposed to feel like this. You're a big child now. So you don't need to be judgmental. So it's very, very important that teachers are also trained right now in how to handle children's moods, how to handle their sharing if they are confiding something in parents. I'm sure you must have read the research that child abuse is at its highest right now around the globe. So it is very, very important to understand whether we are talking about rural children or urban children. Children are facing a lot of mental health issues because of routines gone berserk. And I repeat routines again and again because our brain thrives on a structure. So the more the structure in your environment, in your daily life, the more your brain, the amygdala is your stress armor in the brain. And the amygdala is calm if there is a routine, if there is a structure. So it is very, very important for teachers not to lock out these children and say, no, you can't talk to me about these things. I'm not the counselor. I'm just here to teach English. So it's important that children find somebody they can confide in. And I have suggested to teachers to always do during their sessions some amount of brain exercises like yoga, breathing, etc. Play mind teasers so that it keeps these children engaged with the teacher. So it is very important that when we talk about mental health, we also talk about routines, we talk about connections, and we talk about letting children confide in whatever format they are comfortable in. Every child won't be comfortable talking on a phone with you. So maybe ask the child to send you a message so that you can understand exactly what the child is feeling. I have parents who are sending me all kinds of videos because they are worried about their children. I just got a video today of a parent who said, my child has stopped having eye contact and she's not looking at us in our eyes when we talk to her. So I said, send me a video of why you think that's wrong and let me see if there's anything wrong with the child. And actually the child was quite comfortable and she was talking to people and she was having the average amount of eye contact, but the mother was seeing something which is more exaggerated because she's cooped up in the house since so long and she's fearful that something is going wrong with her child. So you have to learn to talk, placate people, calm them down and help them understand that everything is all right. So children are definitely going through a lot of upheaval. Their only way to communicate sometimes is through tantrums, even the older children. So let's not judge them for those tantrums. Let's understand the reason behind those tantrums and help them solve it together.
So I have a question here which I'll put to Nupur. Nupur, there's a question which says that what's the school industry expecting? What sort of help is it expecting from the government? And since you have a number of institutions, probably you're the right person to answer this.
A very interesting question, and this is something that we've been discussing a lot on a lot of platforms, which like ASOCHAM and FICCI, which represent the industry voice to the government. And I have a few ideas to share. I think not necessarily mine, but it's a collective idea of what educators want today. I think certain practical steps can be taken by the government immediately, which will really provide a lot of relief to the industry. One of the first things is having a little more clarity on what needs to be done. There's very little clarity. I think a lot of vote bank politics is being used, which is ultimately really harming students more than anything else. If you're running a school, yes, it's an evil thing to do, but we do need to charge fees. Because salaries need to be paid. We still suffer from a very socialist hangover in India that education is like, if God forbid you should earn some money out of education. God forbid you train yourself at Harvard and come back, and God forbid you put something good infrastructure in your school. You're being anti-socialist. So the point is that, we work very hard to be enterprising. We work very hard to put good popcorn furniture in our schools. We work very hard for all of that. And there is no harm in asking for compensation for that, because ultimately teachers do need to be paid. Online education needs to be considered the same as physical presence of teachers to a certain extent, because teachers are working equally hard at home, if not harder. So that's one thing. I think recognition, encouragement, and appreciation of the industry is very, very important, which I feel like we're feeling a bit of apathy from the government in that sense. Secondly, I think there should be a special tax regime for teachers, professors, and researchers. We need to incentivize this profession. We need to encourage more teachers to join this profession. In our country, there's very little incentive to join. Secondly, I think that student loans should have a longer moratorium period and lower interest rates, as should loans taken by education institutions to upgrade their infrastructure. There should be partial exemption of GST on outsourced services, because we pass on this cost to our students, and ultimately through higher fees, and ultimately that ends up hurting the students. I also think the government should work on reducing the cost of utilities to school, like electricity and water, at a time like this. It's very important for the government to consider that when we say we want to charge a development fees, we are not asking for something unreasonable. As a school owner, I can tell you that we have to spend a lot now on infrastructure to prepare for the next step, to prepare technologically. We have kids from lower income backgrounds. How do we prepare them? How do we provide them with laptops or technology or connectivity? So a development fees is very important. And I'm not saying the onus falls completely on the parents. I think the onus falls on the government. The average spend of US and Australia per child per year is about $10,000. And as Indians, we are paying 2% education cess. Where is that going? The question really is that why is right to education only limited? And it's a slightly controversial point, to a certain number of students. The right to education should be for each and every child in India, irrespective of their caste, creed, and economic background. I strongly feel that we need to increase the spend the government has on education in terms of our GDP percentage as well. So there's a lot of course, the government, I think, should work on infrastructure and connectivity in rural areas. That's a big onus the government has, providing maybe even laptops to kids. A lot of our EWS kids were migrant kids, and now they have gone back to their villages, and they are completely cut off from education. They still had some connectivity living in Delhi. Now they have no connectivity at all. So that's a job. We can maximum provide them with, say, a laptop. We can really pull into our pockets and provide them with a mobile phone, but we cannot provide connectivity in distant parts of the country, which is the government's job. So I think these are a few practical things that the government can work on to help this sector out, so that more and more people want to join this industry. I cannot tell you how many schools are shutting down during this period, because nobody wants to take the responsibility. It's such a headache to run a school in this country sometimes. So it's very important that the government incentivizes more people to do good work in education, to invest and be more enterprising in education. Sorry, that was very long.
Very interesting, very interesting. Fatima, I know you're very, very passionate about sports, and I've got like almost 7 to 8 questions here from people. I think everybody knows who you are, and your husband is a very famous cricketer. So people are asking me to ask you this particular question. What is a parent supposed to do about the sports factor? Like, because sports is all about, being close, teamwork, and now social distancing is all about far is good and close is bad. So what are we supposed to do? Like, it's not that physical education is not, giving you something. It's a very, very big part to give you a holistic education. So what are we going to do here?
Yeah. Okay. So very relevant question, because Deepika, apart from the online or physical world learning debate, I think the industries of the future are going to be creative arts, performing arts, sport. That's where research that Nupur and I are passionate about. We need to recognize that there are alternative careers going to emerge. And then this pandemic happened, and we're in a lockdown. So how does that physical world really evolve? So I'm a cricketer's wife, and I'm going to give you that example, that they also have an off season. So it's not, well, these days they play 12 months of the year thanks to IPL and the World Cups, etc. But there is time which is called rehab, or a time which is called peak time. So there's a lot of investment, irrespective of the sport that you play, on fitness. So a lot of the sports physios, therapists, teachers as well have been focusing on the fact that if you do a CBC model where you are in lockdown, you concentrate on fitness, routines. Unfortunately, some of it will be linked online, but once you know an exercise, you don't have to constantly watch that video. You can get into these routines. These are now possible even through a voice call. So, it's an excuse to say you can't be fit because you're indoors. There are many exercises. You don't have to go in 4,000 square feet gym. That yoga mat in that small house can do. So don't give me this argument about rural and urban India with the infrastructure available. It is possible. It's just, in my opinion, an excuse. But yes, my heart does go out to a lot of sportsmen. Imagine people training for Olympics, and Olympics has been cancelled. You know what? They pick up an injury and they're out. This is it. 4 years gone. Unfortunately, that's the collateral we're going to have to deal with. But if you keep fit and if you are match ready, as I call it, and invest a lot in fitness, hydration, sleeping, eating well, you're ready to absorb the physical world. Deepika, the world is going to be like almost Japan, that lives through earthquakes. That doesn't mean they evacuate the country just because they have earthquakes. They just learn to deal with it. My sister is in Georgia. She lives with the cyclone. So when this Mumbai cyclone happened, she had a SOP sent to me saying, do this, get in your basement. I said, Baba, we live in an apartment. We have no basement to go under. But there are protocols you follow. I think pandemic will teach us that. So about sport, if you can focus on fitness, and Deepika, there's enough research happening that when we do open up in smaller ways, even with cricket or football that are considered contact sports, wrestling, there are going to be certain protocols that will come in to make sure that, what I call it, non-pharmaceutical intervention, social distancing will follow. It's the protocols we take on. We don't pop in a Crocin every time you have a headache. You take it when it's symptomatic and all of that. Like that, you will have to get used to playing sport in a lot of ways. Wait for that because we're experimenting. There are pilots being put out, which is why I said, forget learning. Learning will happen online or in those classrooms, but the sport, the creativity, the drama, the safe play zones. Deepika, one for you, create infrastructure that allows us to have these safe, sanitized zones for the children to be there. Yes, for them and all budding sportsmen, Nupur mentioned it, mental health is going to be crucial. That's when we're going to have to walk the kids through the fact that it is unsafe, orient them. This is where your communication with parents, teachers comes in, and getting the kids to just accept that certain things cannot be done. You don't consume chocolate all 24 hours. I'm seeing a lot of question on the fact that your eyes will get damaged because you're online all the time. Guys, technology has evolved. There's anti-glare. Your kids are not on online 24 hours like that. Sport needs to be regulated. It will. The next few weeks should have the industry actually coming out with those SOPs. Like I said, wait, take a deep breath. Everything will be operational, but it's going to involve a little bit of experimentation and seeing what's working and not. And I think the pilots will give us huge evidence with it. Thanks, Deepika.
Thanks. I hope that satisfies a lot of people who've asked me these sports-related questions. I think Fatima's given a good insight on that. So, Andy, there's a question for you. A lot of people are saying school transport or private transport. So I think it's the same problem even in Dubai for a school which has school buses, and like, what are we going to do over here? Because when you're in the bus, it's absolutely not possible to have social distancing. You can't have so many people controlling the kid. And the other thing is that wearing masks for long periods of time. So if a kid is attending school and wearing a mask for like the 7 or 8 hours that he's in school, like, are we okay with that?
Great questions. The first one, let's talk about the transport. And that has been coming up a lot. In fact, we've been talking to our current bus company, finding out, what can we do? And I think one of the things that we continue to offer transport is we have to limit the amount of children that can be on the bus. All of our buses already have what we call a bus nanny, who is on the bus, making sure the children are safe, getting them off the bus to their home and this types of things. But that is something that they would have to do as well. So if we're normally having 20 to 30 kids on a bus, it might have to be 10 to 15. You're gonna have to cut it in half or something. One child per seat, that has to be incorporated. Living in Dubai, many parents bring their own children or they have someone drop them off, but we do have a large population that you do use the school bus. So you really have to rethink that as well. So that is a very good question. Yeah, that's so funny. I literally talked to the bus person today about that. What are we gonna put into place? Because it's coming soon. We don't know if August we're starting in the school or September or December or whenever, but we have to have those in place. For the mask, that is an issue. And, you know, there's so much research out there, pros, cons. Do we know what is really real or not? You know, we all have our different masks. I've got mine right here. You know, there's paper ones, there's cloth ones, and there's so much things about each one. And again, I don't know that I have the right answer about that, but I do think we have to wear the mask. We're in public, we're around other people. How do you sit in a classroom all day and not wear a mask? But I think there's also protocols when you can pull it down. You know, one of the things we're doing right now is our gyms have opened up back here in Dubai, 30% capacity, different types of ways, but they're telling us, you know, you need to pull the mask down when you're doing hardcore exercise so you don't block your breathing. If you're outside running, you know, it's already super, super hot here. It's 40 plus degrees here in Dubai. You can't have a mask over your face blocking your airway while you're running or you're weightlifting or you're playing soccer or football or whatever. So again, that's where the teacher's going to have to be knowledgeable about when it's safe to pull the mask down or to take it off for small amounts of time, or when we're social distancing. Is there times during the day where we have to schedule a break and kids are different parts of the school being supervised, but they have a 10-minute break to take their mask off? Again, these are all things that we have to think about that we don't know the answers to still. So
yeah,
everyone has a better idea.
The mask thing is, I think, you know, it's like an issue. I think we all have to wear it. There's no
Yes.
two ways about it. Swati, there's a question for you that most offices are opening now, and July and August is when a lot of people will go back to work. Now, people have been sending little ones to daycares, you know, once they finish school. Now, A, the school hasn't started for them. B, the daycare hasn't opened. What are they going to do under these circumstances?
So if you see the other countries, that's USA, New Zealand, Australia, and even UK, it never closed down its childcare services because they said for doctors and nurses and all these, the first responders, where would they keep their children? So they were on even during lockdown. And what I am foreseeing for India is that the daycares will open before the preschools, because if you want economy to start, if you want corporate houses to start working, parents are going to need daycare because they want to know where to keep their children, and keeping help at home is not going to help because you're not sure about sanitized practices being followed or not. So daycares are what I feel will open before the preschools do open. And that's why in our guidelines, we've included guidelines for daycare, feeding, sleeping, etc. And but under 10s will not start anywhere till September. So it's very, very important for the government to now think about, and corporate houses to do the thinking too, that if they want to open up their offices, then maybe they should start a daycare within the premise so that parents can safely leave their children and under supervised care. And but then traveling becomes a huge problem if parents are traveling by trains or public transport. How do you take the child along with you? So these are big questions that the government will have to think about, corporate houses will have to think about, schools will have to think about. Because if you're expecting your school to open, where is your teacher going to leave their child if the child is not of school going age? So it's very, very important that when we talk about one problem, we cannot look at it in silos. They are all connected to each other, and we will have to think of solutions that will combine into all of these and give us something concrete Because otherwise what's going to happen is daycares will open, government will say, no, we didn't allow you, close them down. And then again, as Andy said, what if there's a case of COVID in your daycare? What will you do? So which means 40 parents now can't leave their children there with you because suddenly the daycare is closed. But I have started going back to work. So what do I do about my work? So it's going to be a trial and error kind of a reopening, and it's all going to depend on, I'm keeping my fingers crossed because I read yesterday about the Spanish flu. And actually, Fatima, I was quite disappointed that the Spanish flu took around 150 years, 1.5 years to get over. And ultimately, it was cured by herd immunity, that people just became immune to it. And we are already into 6 months, and people are saying 1.5 years for the vaccine. Then what progress have we made in the last 100 years if we are also going to take 1.5 years to get over corona? Then medical technology has definitely not made any strides. So it's very, very important for us to understand, is herd immunity again the solution for corona, which is what WHO has hinted, that we'll have to learn to live with it. So that means everything that we work around. On a lighter note, I would say it's high time we all kept our population low now, because it's going to help us in
I agree.
you know. So the government should actually honor couples like me and my husband who decided not to have children. So
Swati, ma'am, like I always say, you have the punchline always. There's always that recognition for you. This one as well.
So we have to make Swati the brand ambassador after this webinar.
For social distancing, for helping the world maintain social distancing.
And thank God for livening up this discussion, because I think we also need to smile a little more.
Yes,
Guys, it's
absolutely.
not so bad. Swati ma'am, I was actually going to say that a lot of the hospital SOPs are going to come into play, where I know I have doctors at home who are working for 14 days and then they quarantine themselves for 14 days. And I know a lot of the daycare centers are thinking about how to regulate. We'll have to find solutions, ma'am, because if the vaccine is not found, and we cannot wait for this herd mentality. UK did it. Then they went into lockdown. We didn't. We went into lockdown, and now we're thinking of herd mentality. I think we still don't have the answers. So we're just going to have to creatively come up with it. But I know that's one study that might be interesting if we can have, especially daycares, because if the economy has to move forward, we're going to have to find solutions for frontline workers and working mums who don't have care at home.
And that's why Deepika,
and we still want learning to happen.
It's the daycares which will have to open first before the preschool.
Yes, definitely. I agree with you. Nupur, there's a question for you. So, in fact, there's like at least 3 or 4 people who have commented on this. They're saying that if we are not able to get fees, how do we end up in paying the salaries of the teachers? So you see, because apparently, like this is like a major problem. Like I have a lot of questions like these, which are coming up on my screen. But what do we do about this? Because beyond a point, we cannot spend from our personal funds. And you know, these are all teachers who are the pillars of their school, meaning they definitely want to take care of them. But beyond a point, what can they do about it?
I think this is a very, very relevant question. I think most school owners are struggling with it right now. And like Swati said, some schools are not facing this problem, but I do know for a fact, I speak to a lot of school owners, because the government did not have clarity to begin with. There were a lot of messages coming. The first message came, oh, you don't need to pay fees. I think it was vote bank politics. Then the message came, oh, now you can't pay only tuition fees. You can't pay transport fees. So there was a lot of ambiguity. And I think a lot of parents took advantage of that ambiguity to decide to not pay fees. And I wouldn't even blame the parents for it. I think there was lack of clarity from the government side from day one. And we are just being played. You know, I feel like a lot of the states are just playing us for vote bank numbers over here. So it is very difficult. It is very difficult for schools to run in the long run if salaries are not paid. Teachers cannot keep working and contributing with the same level of enthusiasm. We are all human beings at the end of the day. We all need compensation. They all need to run their households. So it's something that I think the government needs to make sure that tuition fees is very, very important. It has to be paid. It has to be a very strong directive that has to come from the government. There are no exceptions about it. And also, if certain schools are charging development fees, and if they can justify why they are charging it, if they can show you that, these are the changes we are making and this is what it's costing us, then I think parents should do that. You're paying for other essential services. And I think the education of your child is a very important essential service that you cannot ignore. We applaud nurses, we applaud doctors. I don't know why we're not applauding teachers in a time like this. It's very important. So government needs to make it mandatory. The parents also need to understand it, that, amongst each other, that this is an essential service they need to pay for. And schools are struggling, and they need to maybe voice their concerns in a nicer manner to parents, and have more open communication with the parents in expressing why they need to charge. This is the reason. Look, our books are open to you. We need to pay for XYZ expenses. Today I will not charge you transport fees, but listen, I have bus conductors I need to pay salaries to. I have bus drivers to pay salaries to. If my hostel is not working, I still have nannies to pay salaries to. So I will just charge you tuition fees, but I'm still paying for all of those expenses. Those expenses don't go away. So that's something that parents also need to understand.
Deepika, may I just make a comment? Nupur, it was very interesting because, and I spoke to a parent about this. I said, when you are ordering from, Voucher or Pakistan, and yes, this is an elitist, kind of focus here. But you're not going to the restaurant to eat the food. You're ordering takeaway, but you're paying the same price. That's okay. But right now you're bargaining with the school owner to say, my child is not coming into the physical world. It's not 8 hours or 7 hours. The child is only getting 4 hours of content. So now you give me a discount. I just think this is not a commodity. This is a service. There are teachers involved who are managing many things, are running their houses, giving you the best and your child the best. You're applauding them, but saying, but you know what? Managements take the brunt of it because, we might actually be going through a bit of a crisis. And sorry, not everyone is going through a crisis. So someone's just piggybacking on someone else's misfortune. I think that's the sad part. And yes, the directive must come from the government. I agree with Nupur, because, unfortunately, it's the consumer courts. It's these activists that have jumped into the bandwagon to say, I will get you a deal. I think we need to recognize that education, like Nupur said, is essential service. This is the future that's going to control our world in the next 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years. You don't want to invest in that, but you want the future to be secure. Do the math, parents. And I think it has to be a government directive, and voices like ours need to appeal. And I know Swati ma'am's doing a fair bit with ECA and APER and appealing, but I think we need more voices, Swati ma'am.
But Deepika, schools still will get the fees, the high schools, because the parent wants the child to be promoted. They are scared about that. Did you know that 50% of private preschools are closing down because parents in our country don't consider early years important, and neither does the government.
I couldn't agree more. It's a huge
problem. You can appeal to the government for school fees, but who do you appeal to for these private preschools? Because preschools are considered a babysitting unit, right. And you can do away with them. I don't need to send my child to the preschool. So to hell with James Heckman and his theory. To hell with the new education policy, which says that learning starts from the early years, and to hell with brain research that says that whatever your child will become is decided in the first 5 years of life.
Absolutely.
But parents don't want to invest in that. And who do we go to for private preschools to get the fees from the parents? Because you also have that excuse, these young babies can't sit in front of online teaching. So what are you giving us? So we are not going to pay you the fees. So it's very, very important to understand that parents need to, as Fatima said, children may be 20% of our present, but they are 100% our future. So it's high time we invested in the future, which is our children. They are our human resource. And whatever the age of the child, it's a human resource of that country. So it's sad that, you have these change.orgs being open, 2 lakh parents have signed. I want to ask these 2 lakh parents, each one of you don't have the money to pay fees. You're all getting your salaries. You're all having your businesses. So why are you all ganging up like that? If you have an issue, go on a case-to-case basis with the school and sort it out. Don't gang up like this and turn education into a mockery based on fees. I'm sorry, but I feel this very strongly, because it's turned into a circus, trying to blame schools for charging fees as if we are doing somebody, we are stealing money from someone and we are the biggest terrorists of the world. It's really sad, really sad.
And spare a thought for that teacher who's putting in all that effort. What about motivating them? What about their mental health to remain energetic in front of your children and to provide, like Swati ma'am said, that contact and that go-to person? I'm sorry, but this is leading to a huge amount of demotivation for those teachers who are going beyond. So I think as a community, as an ecosystem, let's empathize. And I think Srilata has mentioned that, listen, but you all need to listen to parents. Yes, let it be a need-based problem.
Yes.
Let's not piggyback on someone's misfortune. We are prepared to talk, and I think any sensible management is wanting to build that relationship for the future. Talk, but do it not through courts, do it not through activists, and do it not through advocates. Do it as meaningful conversations.
Fantastic, definitely.
I think it's very important to not degrade the teaching profession. All of this is just degrading the teaching profession. And I think it's one of the most noble profession anyone can enter. And
absolutely,
they're bringing it down to
private schools. Private schools are being treated as if they are monsters. We
are targeted literally. Like in India, at least, I feel like private schools get no support from the government. It's a very, very sad situation.
And it is actually because of the private schools that the quality of education in this country or in any country has been elevated. So it's actually, they should be thankful to the private schools.
I think regulation is important, but what they're doing is suffocation instead of regulation.
Absolutely.
That is a problem, I feel.
Actually, that's a beautiful comment. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in. They're saying private schools are now made to work like government schools. I mean, that says it all. Instead of being progressive, you're being regressive. So I think, Andy, you haven't spoken. You might want to have the last.
The women have taken over.
You guys are saying all the thoughts, but seriously, like we're facing the same issues with school fees. And what you said about these parents, they're coming constantly. We need discount. We need discount. We need 50%. We gave all of our parents this year 20% discount just out of the goodness of the owner's heart. And then they're wanting more and more and more because they're saying just what you're saying. Well, but they're not at school. They're not using all the resources. They're not using the swimming pool. They're not using the gym or the canteen. So we're hearing the excuses daily because it's tuition fee time, so it's tough. You have to pay salaries, like you said, and these teachers are working their booties off. I mean, more than ever. We're all working, it feels like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there's no thanks. So we have to work on that. We have to fix that. And the parents have to help.
So Andy, there's a question for you. What's the negative impact of online classes on both the learner and the teacher based? Like what is so much of online stuff which is happening because it's like literally you're duplicating the school at home through an online class. So what's the negative impact of that for the teacher and for the student?
Well, for the teacher, what we found is, they're having to spend much more time preparing the lessons because they don't have the resources that they would have in their physical classroom. They're working from home, some of them living in a studio apartment. You can only do so much with that. So they're having to be very creative. So the planning time is it's greater. They're staying up very late. They're getting up very early. They're teaching their live lessons. They finished one live lesson. They're prepping for the next live lesson. So it's very, very different. What was the second part of the question?
Just on the teacher and the students.
And the students. For the students is different. And each one of these children, there's no one size fits approach. And we found that, in the classroom, it's a lot easier to differentiate the instruction and have individual learning plans. And, what we've done is we've tried really hard to use our reading specialists, our math specialists, our students of determination teachers, our teaching assistants, all the other staff that doesn't have a necessary classroom, and they're meeting with students one-on-one. Our school counselor meets with one of our children. He just cannot sit in a live lesson and conduct himself in a manner that is conducive for the rest of the children and for the teacher. And we just had to make the decision that you have to do your lesson with the school counselor. He will sit with you. He will walk you through every problem. He will do the same lesson, but we can't let one child that is just like we would do in school, we would remove him from that situation. We're doing the same thing online. You just have to think of creative ways to do that. So TAs, teaching assistants, are working with students one-on-one and doing small groups. There's ways to do it, but it does take a lot more energy. It takes a lot more thought process. You're having to figure out, one thing we learned from the get-go is our parents here are not very good with technology. They don't understand how to view a live lesson or upload something. So we had to spend a lot of time, and teachers who are not IT experts, they're making videos and showing step by step. You click on here, you type your password, you click on here, then you upload. Other things that we're adding to the teacher's plate constantly. And many times they're doing it themselves because they're teachers. That's what they do. A parent needs help, they figure it out, whether it's them doing it or they're finding someone else that can help them. So for students, we have to do what's best. So you do try to replicate what you do in the normal classroom in the online setting, but it takes a lot more preparation and a lot more time.
Yeah, it's basically, I think the load on the teachers has gone up immensely, and
yes,
really we need to salute them for that because it's servicing. Nupur, there's a question for you that what about conducting classrooms in shifts? And the other part of the question is that what if you start school and parents still don't want to send the kids to school till the vaccine comes out? So it means those 10% or 20% kids who don't want to come to school till the vaccine comes out, you need to create a parallel system for them at home still.
So I think that is a problem we are going to face. I think we have to prepare for it. There will be a lot of parents who will not be ready to send their kids to school. So that's wherein I think blended learning will play a even stronger role. And the first part of your question, I think what we are planning, and we are still waiting for government directive, is that we would try to finish the syllabus faster, shorten it, make it more relevant, and maybe do school twice a week, or maybe 3 times a week instead of every day. And even then call students in batches. Say 30% of the students come in, and they social distance from each other, and they work in smaller groups. Again, a lot of the lessons will happen online. So, I think the answer to these questions will evolve. I don't think anyone has the right.
I think there is no right way to do it.
We can just conjecture that we'll only have 30% kids come in. We don't know how it's going to work out until we actually do it. We don't know what problems we'll face with that system also. I think the only country which has successfully opened schools till now is New Zealand. I think we should all be studying their model. We should all be studying.
They haven't reported positive cases. I mean, that country is safe at the moment.
Safe
so,
already,
it's not like us. We have our challenges, and the spike is only going higher and higher and higher.
All these questions is something that I'm sure UK dealt with and France dealt with, and they still had positive cases and they still have to shut down.
Nupur, so the point I wanted to make is adding on to what you said, like it's conjecture at the moment. But I think parents and the schools need to remain committed to the fact that it's going to be flexible. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say that we might have odd and even on a given month, and we might switch to 3 days, concise, relevant learning. I think we're going to need each one's support to work this out. And it's not going to be black and white. It's gray. It's very much like Andy's school color.
It's going to
gray.
Be a lot of gray and practice, and then make mistakes, and then learn from the mistakes. Yeah.
And learning lessons, Nupur, let's not be so hard on ourselves as long as we're not experimenting with a child's health. And that is going to be a priority. I think we should give ourselves credit as the parent community and the educator community to work on flexibility and remain flexible for the next 18 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, we are planning to begin with non-contact sports, activities which don't require, in phase 1, which don't require too many kids collecting in one place together, but they still get the advantage of seeing each other do things. Mm-hmm. And maybe in phase 2, introduce a few contact activities. So I think it's all about doing phases and planning. Every school will plan what's comfortable for them, which state and city they live in, whether they're a green zone, whether they're red zone. It'll depend on local conditions, and we'll have to adapt to local conditions, whatever they are.
Totally. Fatima, there's a question for you. You know, we've been talking about play schools with Swati, and we've been talking about regular schools. But there's a question about the residential schools. So people are saying, what do we do here? Because my child is in a residential school, or like do they continue online for a larger period of time than the rest? What are they supposed to do?
So, it also depends on demographically where these schools are located. I find that the residential schools are actually in non-containment zones as we speak, and we do analysis of the country. Once, I think we're going to get used to self-quarantining anyway. You might have mild symptoms. UK did that. You quarantine yourself at home. You don't rush to a hospital. Like that, if parent communities can actually start sending this children to the residential schools, because they are the ones actually that have had contact sports throughout. NDT, we had this beautiful example of a residential school where the kids were continuing to play football because they're footballers going into a league as soon as the world opens up. So I think residential schools have it far easier because one, they're all in confined zones. There are quarantines, so your sanitation protocols work out. You have furniture like yours actually, there working with school management. And after the quarantine period, you can get on. So I think residential schools is a better option at the moment, as opposed to people coming in and out. The whole country needs to be in a physical world, but residential schools have it easier after the self-quarantine measure. Only a couple of things: you need to have access to hospital, doctors, and definitely children with underlying conditions of asthma, diabetes. Juvenile diabetes is rampant in our country. Those can therefore be avoided. But just regular kids, older kids going in first, and anyway, residential schools are all after middle school. Older kids, easier to communicate, understand social distancing norms, and anyway, they're in lockdown, literally, because they're not actually interacting with anyone else. I think that's safer. And you can actually go full-fledged and do everything you did post-COVID-19.
So I'm actually getting the questions faster than I can read them. And Swati, there's this particular question for you, because they're saying that since you are advising schools from all over India, and you're advising schools in all tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, all sort of cities. And what they're saying is that how are they supposed to cope up in the tier 2 and tier 3 cities or in rural areas where, teachers have not been so, proficient in going to the online methods, internet connectivity is not there, children don't have mobile, laptops. It's not possible to do an entire lesson on a mobile phone. So how do they handle it in such a case?
So if we are talking about our rural community and our Anganwadis, basically the government owned preschools, etc., you would be surprised to know that those teachers who are right now supposed to actually look after children are looking after the lines at liquor shops. Because the income from liquor shops is very important for the government right now. Has anybody wondered what's happening to their midday meals? These children used to go to school only for that one midday meal. Why can't these teachers go and give the midday meal in their homes? Why can't each teacher be assigned to 15 homes? Their inoculations are suffering. So similarly, if you look at the word Anganwadi, it came from Tarabai Modak, where she started conducting courtyard schools, which means you go to the courtyard of a parent, and that is where you give activities, etc. So even if you don't have, you didn't have internet in those days, but they still reach out to the communities which didn't have access to schools. So if we have a will, there is a way. Right now you have government school teachers, Anganwadi Sevikas, they are not being used for education work. They are being used for all kinds of other rubbish work. So instead it's time to put them back into the jobs that they were actually appointed for, and they can go from home to home and ensure that the hygiene ideas are shared with the parents, with the children, rhymes, storytelling, all these things can be done with the children. So it's a mindset, mind block that we have, that everything is now hinged on Wi-Fi. It's not so. It wasn't so 100 years back also. So it's very, very important for us to understand that when we talk about decisions, like Early Childhood Association has now taken up Balwadis in Mumbai, and we spoke to parents of these Balwadis. That means these are parents who don't earn that much. And we asked them, do you want the learning for your children to start? And they were so eager. They said, we all have a mobile phone. We all have a smartphone. And for 1 hour a day, if you are going to come and talk to our children or to us, we are very, very ready. So we have about 750 parents like that who have signed up, and we are helping an NGO now train their teachers to talk to these parents, make WhatsApp videos and send out to these parents. So WhatsApp is available in every corner of this country. So don't tell me that Wi-Fi is not available. The amount of TikTok videos that I'm seeing coming from whatever different parts of this country, don't tell me that you don't have Wi-Fi, because how did you load it on TikTok? So it's very important to understand that where there is a will, there is a way, and we have to develop that way. And I'm worried about children, because 70% of your children live in these kind of communities, and we're not worried about them because we are saying, oh, it's okay right now if children don't have activities. So it's important that we find the way, and we are doing it as an association. If anybody wants to come to us and bring us a community who needs help, we are very much ready for the same.
Fatima, there's a question for you. It says that probably you're the best person to answer this, that they've set up a schools which have just been set up in the last couple of years. They're already struggling with admissions. They've just about, put in all their finances into making a building. And now, parents are not paying fees. That is one thing. But how do they end up in attracting admissions in such a time? Or let's say a school was opening, has just opened in the month of April. And literally, it's almost like it's a 0 year for them.
Yeah, a very tough period, but like most industries are going through, you're going to have to think out of the box. I think a couple of solutions, use this time to invest in building communication, create, platforms for the parents to recognize how the learning is happening. So I call them complementary sessions where you actually engage with parents, give them that week of online learning, whatever you're putting in, to let them know exactly how you're leading the children through that holistic learning, uninterrupted, seamless learning. Conversions won't happen, but unless you invest now in that time and effort to communicate with these parents, you won't even get those conversions happening in September when we will be in the physical world. So remember, parents are also watching which school is actually producing that quality work and then making that step. I would say use this time in the interim a bit creatively. Look at 3 models. Look at the physical world where fees are paid, and those were the parents who are continuing with you. Why don't you create engagements virtually, which is like pay as you go? If I could, sorry, I'm commercializing it, but I'm just saying options for them to log in weekly for you. At least you're engaging with parents, and once they're hooked on, and if you're a quality product and your education really stands for 21st century and the 22nd century skills that we talk about, there will be conversions, because no parent in their right mind will not want the child to learn. That's a given. Now you're going to have to come up with it. You might have a lower fee structure for them. Like I said, treat it like an activity center, treat it as online classes, but at least start engaging with them. I think the next 3 months are going to be crucial. Use your parents as ambassadors to talk about what you're doing right in your school. You're going to go out there and communicate all the stuff that you're doing. Bring in virtual classroom guest speakers, bring in experts, give them theater arts, give them music, give them dance. You've anyway invested. You're anyway deep in your pockets there. Why don't you use this time to actually create multiple modules, versions of the programs you can actually have? And quite honestly, most schools should be thinking about it. If parents are not going to pay full fees, what's the other option? What's the alternative? Eventually, we'll all stabilize, and eventually it'll be a conversion that happens. But till then, at least optimize on the investment that you already have. Use this time to communicate and showcase what you're doing well. Yeah, it's a tough time. My heart goes out to you. I started a company in COVID-19. 2nd of April, I started. So I'm thinking creatively of how to do it. But there are options. I can say I've come up with alternatives to what I was charging in the physical world. And there are, I mean, I'm happy to take this offline and guide you. But I know what I've said is actually a great starting point.
So Nupur, just last few questions. There's a question which says that are exams on the way out, and how are kids going to be judged now? Because, you know, when the test is being given, they really don't know, like, if the child is actually opening a book and doing it. Like, it's a very major issue, which seems to be like a lot of school, promoters have written on the chat about it.
No, I completely agree. I think the way we examine kids is going to change in a very big way. A lot of colleges abroad are doing away with SAT scores. They're doing away with GMAT and GRE scores because they realize that's a big hindrance. And I think standardized testing is very passé. We need, like I said before, we need personalized assessment for kids. Teachers are working with smaller groups of kids now on Zoom and on online platforms, and hence they are able to assess them in a more personalized manner and create methods of assessment which are more relevant to each child, depending on that child's ability. Some children are very good at writing. Some children are very good at speaking. So I think personalized assessment is what's going to happen. The student-teacher ratio is going to reduce, and standardized testing is going to go out in the future. A lot of schools abroad are already doing it officially. I think we are just going to follow suit.
Deepika, Dr. Abdul Kalam was the one who had promoted open book examinations. And he said that if a child even knows where the matter is in the book, then what's wrong? You do see lawyers referring to books. You do see physicians referring to books. So as long as I know where the matter is in the book, it's okay if I am looking in the book.
So, I mean, there's a big debate between, whether rote learning is good or not. Like, if you're going to become a doctor, yes, you need to memorize facts. You need to memorize names of different veins and organs. But besides certain professions, I think rote learning and memorizing is completely out now. You have Siri to answer all your questions. So you don't need to know facts. You need to show how you're utilizing or applying those facts, and how relevant it is to your daily life. So the assessment has to change according to that.
And I'm just going to add in, even if CBSE doesn't make it, an online assessment, Deepika, I think, and Nupur, I think you'll agree with me that we anyway now need to lay the foundation for online assessment. I know where we're coming from. It has to be formative and summative. There has to be, but you can look at MCQs now. You let the child have the textbook, like Swati ma'am said, that's fine. You can manage to crack that exam in 30 minutes looking at 20 books. Credit to you. You're the genius. You're definitely going to be up there with the marks. Also the type of questions. If you're going to ask only knowledge-based questions, this whole exercise is futile. So I think MCQs, critical thinking, logic, coding, application-based is what we're going to see. And sorry, even if you're a CBSE school, you have no excuse not to prepare your children for an alternative, which is online. Again, we'll another 100 years later, it'll be my grandson on some panel discussion talking about what we didn't do in 2020. Let's prepare, and let's know that technology is going to have to be the enabler, whether you're in a physical or the virtual world. It's something we have to prepare for now.
Absolutely. So I think, like, we've overshot our time. We were supposed to finish at 6, but I can't even begin to tell you, I couldn't even address all the questions that have been coming in. And concluding, I guess we are all looking at a very blended model for schools, post the COVID-19 situation. I don't think schools are going to be the same way that they were. Probably there are going to be some positive changes which will come about. Thank you to all the panelists and to the most amazing audience. It's the first time I conducted a webinar, so please excuse me. I have to step in for Abha Adams at the last moment due to a personal emergency, and she sends her apologies to all of you. And I hope all of you took something from this webinar which might help you. We at Popcorn are gearing up with a lot of safety options, so do get in touch anytime if you need anything. Now it's time for me to announce the winner of the 30,000 rupees gift voucher from Popcorn Furniture. And the name of the school is Cognizance International Academy. So we'll be in touch with you very soon. And also we have a special offer for all of you who've attended the webinar, and we'll communicate it to you by email. The webinar will be available on Facebook and YouTube in case you want to refer to it. And thank you so much, Andy, Nupur, Fatima, and Swati. Meaning, cannot thank you enough. It was absolutely amazing. And I think I'm the only non-educationist on this panel. So I think I've ended up in learning a lot from all of you for sure. So thanks.
But you were amazing. You were amazing. Let me tell you.
Yes.
As your debut moderator, your debut was fantastic.
Thank you, Swati. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Okay,
so
bye-bye.
Bye.
Hope to see everyone in the physical world sooner
Yes,
than later.
come visit Dubai anytime.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Thank
Lovely
you.
meeting you all. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.